You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Welcome back. It's the Work It podcast with me, Tiffany. Now, each month, I check in with my colleagues at CNA Today to talk about a work-related topic that they have been researching and writing on. And today, we are talking about time. Now, all of us know at least one person who thrives on deadlines and schedules. You tell them to meet you at 1 p.m., they're there by 12:50. Those are the people who live by clock time. Then there are others who tell you, I'll get it done by lunch, but you have no idea what that means. Is it 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock? Well, these are the people who live according to event time. I bet you are picturing these friends right now in your head. Now, what about colleagues? Anyone in those two camps? And what happens if you are an event time person, but working in a place where people follow things in a clockwork fashion? And are there cultural differences too if you're working in a different country? Well, joining me in the studio today is CNA Today journalist Eunice Sng. She has been looking at how different ways of looking at time can affect our productivity and mental health in the workplace. Welcome back, Eunice.
Hi.
Now, before we dive into the details, I've got a few rapid fire scenarios lined up to find out about our individual relationship with time. So let's walk through each one and then you just tell me immediately what comes to your mind, okay? First up, you have a daily catch-up call with your best friend. Do you set a time or go with the flow?
Since I feel that a catch-up call with my friend is just a friendly, casual meeting, I'll say like in the evening after I finish dinner.
Okay.
So give a rough estimate of that time slot between maybe 9 and 10 p.m., for example. If the friend requests for a set time, I'll agree to it. But eventually, I still might be about 10 to 15 minutes late if I have to complete something else before that. So I'll just tell her maybe slightly in advance that maybe can we delay it by a bit.
So for me, I would set a time. I would say, okay, I'll call you at 8 p.m. And I actually will look at the clock. And if I see it's like 7:59, I'll get myself ready and then I'll call at 8 o'clock. Yeah. Okay, there's an extended weekend. What's the plan?
So usually maybe I'll spend Saturday resting for leisure activities and then spend Sunday working. But work can begin anytime on the Sunday. So I just, in my brain, I'll say I'll work on Sunday.
Yeah.
But if I wake up and then I
It's
feel
when
like,
you wake up.
when I wake up, or maybe I'll have lunch first or breakfast with my family, then I'll start to do the work.
Now, being a mom, I do try and be more efficient with my time.
Okay.
So I would tell myself, okay, I set aside this number of hours. If I need to do work, maybe say 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., I'll go and do grocery shopping and then prep dinner at 5 o'clock so that it's ready by 6. And in that way, for me, it's less stressful because I'm able to communicate to my family or my children that, okay, mommy needs to go and prep dinner now. It's 5 p.m. or I need to just reply some emails. It's 2 p.m. Just give me until 3 p.m. and then I can come back and play with you. So I think it's clear that you are an event time person and I'm definitely a very clock time person. So I think today's discussion is going to be very interesting. Help me to fill in the gaps a little bit, right? I described earlier about what event time is and clock time is. Are there any main differences between these two groups that I have missed out?
I think broadly overall, event timers have a looser relationship with the clock.
Very loose.
While clock timers view time in the more typical way that prevails in modern industrial societies today. Glancing at their watches every few minutes might be the clock timers' habit. A daily schedule to them might look like waking up at 8 a.m., beginning to work at 10 a.m., having lunch at 1 p.m., exercising at 6 p.m., then hitting the sack at 11 p.m.
Why you describe my day?
On the other hand, event timers might, get out of bed when they don't feel tired already, or eat meals when their stomach starts to rumble, or work on a task until they think it's complete, which can be any time.
Yes.
Miss Charlene Ng, who's the director of her own practice, Charlene Coaching, said she does not view the concept as opposites. She also mentions that each of us actually carry elements of both within us, applied depending according to the activity. So scheduling a meeting together for a project typically follows the clock timer mindset, but Perhaps, going out to play with the park with your children leans towards more the event timer orientation, which is more fluid and socially driven. These aren't just personal quirks, they can also be shaped by cultural norms.
Interesting that you brought up cultural norms as well. So I would say that in Singapore, the work culture here is very much a clock time driven concept. But some countries may perhaps be a bit different, right?
According to my research, people from Latin America or neighboring Southeast Asian countries have more flexible expectations with time as compared to others. And one of the career coaches that I talked to, Miss Cindy Wirawan, she also shared an anecdote of hers when she first moved to Singapore.
Where is she from?
She's from Indonesia.
Indonesia, okay.
So she mentioned how, back in her home country in Indonesia, people were very flexible with time, that they even have a phrase in Indonesian which means rubber time. And until today, she said that she still jokes with her friends whenever she's late. That's because of the Indonesian in her.
So it's interesting that you brought that up because I, being a very clock-driven person, when I moved to Malaysia to work in the initial months, is not very easy, only because I couldn't understand why people had this sort of rubber time as well. My Malaysian friends would joke and they call it MST, Malaysia Standard Time. And no shade to any Malaysians who are listening to this, but I actually learned that it is really not because people are not responsible with time. It's just that there's traffic. People intend to be there on time, but then they don't get there on time. And I had to learn to just go with the flow. So I had to do the reverse by trying to fit into a culture that is a little bit more event time managed. But Singapore is built for clock timers like myself. So what happens if somebody like you have to work in a place like Singapore where the environment is more clock driven? What are some of the more common challenges you would face?
So one of the career coaches I talked to, Mr. Ivan Fu from the mental health company Intellect, talked about how event timers might experience time guilt. So they might constantly feel as though they're falling short compared to peers who thrive in a very highly structured environment. But I think this is more of a reflection of cultural norms rather than personal capability. This misalignment between the external expectations and internal rhythms breeds a lot of chronic stress, and it drains the event timer's mental energy, triggering an internal narrative of
that they're not good enough,
insufficiency.
Right?
Yeah, like why I can't be like others, why am I always behind?
Like why am I not productive enough, not efficient enough, right?
So this stress impairs the executive functions like focus, decision making, and motivation. And what follows is just a dangerous spiral of negative self-talk. Like, I'm lazy, I have poor time management, I'm not capable. And then Mr. Fu also talks about how, as a result, the event timer might try to overstructure their lives and follow the clock timer mindset.
Yes.
But
which is very out of their comfort zone.
Which is out of their comfort zone. It's not how they plan their time, their internal rhythm. And this can actually lead to burnout because they are not used to living by the calendar. But, they could ironically also feel uneasy when the calendar seems empty, especially when the peers' calendars are filled with meetings and tasks.
Okay.
All these uncertainties and insecurities could lead to insomnia, not being present at work, and not being present at home due to worrying. And overall it just might make them feel that they are spaced out everywhere all the time. And I do experience this sometimes as well.
I don't suppose event timers are just trying to delay tasks for the sake of delaying it, right? So what exactly is going through their mind if they are not quote unquote catching up with time?
I think it's just a different way of working. So Ms. Ng also talks about one of the challenges of event timers is that they feel boxed by the clock, which I do also. A not so empowering boundary sounds like you must start this at 10 a.m. and end by 11 a.m.
So that's
it
not
feels
good for them.
Yeah, it feels like a cage. So when that happens, I feel quite restricted, and actually it backfires because it creates more anxiety for me, and it causes me to delay tasks even more because I just become so insecure that I cannot finish it within that 1 hour time slot.
But I think it's good to also pause here and also talk about the fact that it's not that event timers are not good at finishing up tasks, right? The same could also affect clock timers as well. Because as you are describing yourself, I'm thinking that I could also potentially have problems as a clock timer. Let's say somebody who's too obsessed with watching the clock. What kind of challenges could they possibly face?
When a person uses the clock very heavily to decide what to do and when to stop, they might also have a looser relationship with their own sense of control, because when they look towards external cues to inform their actions, these external cues are what control the world and their whole sense of being. Whereas for event timers, their actions might make a more meaningful difference in determining what happens to them. I've read some sources also that showed that using the clock has also been linked to lower ability to savor positive feelings such as joy, gratitude, or excitement. So when clock timers rely more on these external cues to decide what to do, they aren't as tuned towards their inner feelings. Yeah, so overall, maybe event timers might feel more harmony in the world around them.
That is totally true. I do feel that sometimes I can't stay in the present and enjoy the task for what it is, because I'll tell myself, okay, I still have 15 minutes left, and then I need to rush off to go and do something else, because it feels like I promised myself that I need to move on. I would have to ask myself, okay, do I enjoy this at this moment? And if I do, it's okay to extend. Just go with it and then drop something, maybe adjust the clock later on. So that's something that I consciously have to do, because I'm aware that it could actually impede me in terms of how I learn, how I experience things, how I finish a task. But let's go back to the idea of how event timers will associate, certain negative sentences to themselves, right? What's the impact of that inner monologue for us?
All right, so Mr. Lim Han Yi, who is an executive coach at Emerge Performance, says that it could lead to identity dissonance because they feel a big disconnect with how they naturally function and what their environment demands. And all this negative self-talk can eventually chip away at their sense of self-worth. And he has also seen how it can show up as decision fatigue. When people have difficulties focusing, they even mask like procrastination as perfectionism.
So are event timers simply at a disadvantage in a workplace like here in Singapore? Can they also translate their strengths into our work culture here?
So Mr. Lim from Emerge Performance mentions that event timers' natural time orientation doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be flexed. Because event timers also bring strengths like empathy, presence, and adaptability, which are qualities crucial for collaboration and creativity. So the challenge is to honor these traits while also meeting the accountability structures in the workplace.
Yeah, but how do bosses also help to recognize that these are qualities that are crucial for collaboration and creativity?
Bosses can maybe frame the flexibility within boundaries. So in Mr. Lim's opinion, he feels that we don't have to be rigid to be reliable. For example, we can agree on fixed checkpoints like weekly syncs or delivery milestones, but leave space for how the work gets done in between. So it creates more trust and autonomy.
Right. So if you say that like, okay, finish this task by Friday, but don't do sort of like 2 regular check-ins.
Yeah. He also talks about how event timers can use social time strategically, because he believes that event timers thrive on conversations and connections. Rather than seeing this as a distraction, we can also build it to our calendar, such as informal catch-up, post-meeting debriefs. So when structured with intention, the social time may actually improve the event timer's focus. If the event timer needs longer time blocks for deep work or recovery in between meetings, they can also speak up. The key is to own your working style while still being accountable for your output.
So you have to be quite self-aware, and also it's good to identify who are the sort of event timers. Then you give them a bit of a looser leash, and then maybe clock timers need things that are a bit more structured, right? They need to know when is the meeting time, what time do you need this by. You cannot say like end of day, you need to say by 5 p.m. So as an event timer yourself, what has helped you to bridge the gap between your natural self and then the structure that's expected in the professional setting that you are in?
I think I still struggle with this a lot, but I think hearing the advice from career coaches has been quite helpful. So Miss Dane Tang, from another career coach and executive coach, said that people can identify perhaps 2 or 3 non-negotiable commitments in the day, such as board meetings or client presentations, and design the rest of the activities around them.
Okay.
Yeah. So adding on to the concept, Miss Charlene Ng also suggested that event timers can adopt anchors or fixed moments in the day that act like landmarks, some things that feels familiar to them. For example, micro habits like after my morning coffee, I will check my email. Helps to build routine without so much rigidity.
I like this idea of choosing 2 or 3 non-negotiables, these like landmark events in the day, so that you don't have to carry too much mental load.
So another method they talked about is to schedule tasks according to peak energy periods when you are most alert and focused, so the activities can be completed more efficiently.
So you do have an energy peak in a day?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
For me, that's in the morning.
Okay.
So I think I'll try to do the more difficult task in the morning so that I can focus and get it done faster. My energy drops throughout the rest of the day, so I'll do maybe simpler tasks. After that.
Yeah, I like that you made it clear, because it's not saying that I just work in the morning and then after that, once my energy starts dropping, I don't do any work. But it's about doing the hard tasks at where your energy is peaking.
Yeah. Also, Ms. Ng warned about a common pitfall of event timers, which is the vagueness of their tasks. She mentioned how blocking out, for example, 6 hours to create a PowerPoint, that can lead to drifting.
What's drifting?
You start delaying it or not really working on it consistently throughout the 6 hours. So she suggested maybe to break it down into mini episodes of accomplishment, into possible subtasks like to gather the data, to validate the ideas, design the flow, review with colleagues and draft the email. So once these smaller tasks are defined, you assign an anchor to each.
Yeah. I think every part of this conversation that we have is not trying to make event timers be like clock timers or clock timers be like event timers. I mean, there are pros and cons to both groups, and it's all about being aware. While working on this article, did it help you to maybe plan your day better? Did it give you a little bit more, sort of like closure in some of the things that you couldn't understand about yourself?
Yeah, I think it helped to explain a lot of what I was experiencing, but I have yet to try these tips. I will consciously try to adapt these routines into my daily habits in the near future.
Yeah, I think there's certain things that I can learn. I think I like the idea of picking 2 or 3 landmark events in a day and let everything else be a little bit more loosely adjusted so that I am less stressed about my day. If any part of today's conversation hits close to home, you'll want to keep a lookout for Eunice's full feature, which will be out this weekend. If you have a topic you'd like us to talk about on this podcast, write to us at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. You can also find us on cna.asia, Spotify, Apple Podcast, MeListen, and YouTube. A big thanks to the podcast team, Ho Pei Ning, Junaini Johari, Joanne Chan, Saye Win, Alison Jenner, and Shaza Dalila. This is Tiffany Ang, and I'll speak with you next week. Bye for now.